Hello, 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 hello. And I want to start with a rendition of this today. I'm in the mood to sing. I'm in the mood to sing. And if you're looking for love out in the world, if you're looking for anything, beauty or anything in the world, this song's for you. And if you know who this if you know who you are, I'm dedicating this song to you. You fill up my senses like a night in the forest, like the mountains in springtime, like a walk in the rain, like a storm in the desert, like a sleepy blue ocean. You fill up my senses, come fill me again. Come, let me love you, let me give my life to you. Let me drown in your laughter, let me die in your arms, let me lay down beside you, let me always be with you. Come, let me love you, come love me again. You fill up my senses like a night in the forest, like the mountains in springtime, like a walk in the rain, like a storm in the desert, like a sleepy blue ocean. You fill up my senses, come fill me again. Content looking to Z, good to see you guys. First in the gate, evening that guy, good to see you. Good to see you guys. One of the lessons that I've really been taking from this week, I got banned on TikTok, and I've been really thinking about how I've been interacting and how I've been acting in this space. Yeah, Isaac, you're right about that. Good evening to you, Anemone. And I do have to start reaching for love more. I have to start reaching for compassion more. I have to start treating people more, with more, compassion is the word, right? Seraphim, good to see you. Anemone, absolutely pleasure to see you. There's so much propaganda going around, and there's so much bullshit happening in the society that I just have to be persistent and I have to be consistent, but I gotta ditch this hating on people attitude. Except Nazis. If you're a Nazi, you get fucked. But I do think that, like, there are well-meaning people out in the world who are trying their best, who actually think they've done the work. That was one thing that happened to me fairly recently. That I encountered somebody who he's an anti-communist, and then he starts giving me sources, and it's like his sources are like high-level people, not academics, not people associated with universities, but people who are like, part of the Atlantic, part of high-level organizations and things like this. That I looked at and I thought to myself, oh yeah, like here's a guy who is reading books, being produced, like a Pulitzer Prize winning author, right? And he thinks that he's done it. He thinks that he's done the work, and that and then you read criticisms of the work, and you're like, oh yeah, like, she doesn't source what she says, like, she's not actually telling you the truth, and she's omitting lots of stuff, right? And it really made me recognize, like, oh, you know, like, people are just being taken in, and that they're not going to listen. They're not going to listen if you come at them with the heat. They're going to listen if you say to them, hey, bud, or they might listen, rather, not that they will, but they might, if we start to acknowledge and recognize, like, oh yeah, you've been taken in. Like, you've been taken in, and here's how you've been taken in. We can show you. Like, and this is the other part of it. It's getting easier to show how people have been taken in. Isaac's absolutely coming out with the heat. Definitely wants. Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of well-meaning working class people who think that they're doing what's right, and people who want to believe that they're doing what's right. And everybody wants to believe they're doing the right thing. Like, that's the truth. Everyone wants to believe they're doing the right thing, and no one wants to really listen to somebody who's telling them, like, hey, like, we're not doing the right thing. And as Isaac is quick to point out today, the world is dropping the dollar. Everybody's getting ready. Everybody's getting ready for it. Like, anybody who's in any position, and anybody who's in any no position whatsoever is absolutely preparing themselves for the decline. Like, I worry that it's going to, and even, like, I feel like even regular citizens, even the normies, kind of expect it. That there's this sort of expectation that's going on throughout the public. That they don't necessarily know how to articulate it. They don't necessarily know how to talk about it. But they know it's happening. That's the sense that I'm getting from the people that I'm interacting with. That there is just this sort of general sense that, like, yeah, the whole thing's going to come down. Like, you can talk to people about it and be like, yeah, like, what are we going to do when this whole thing comes down? And people aren't like, what are you talking about? People are like, yeah. And I like to try to make a little joke of it and say, like, yeah, the whole thing will come down, and for a week we'll all complain about it, and then we'll all move on with our lives and just do whatever it is we think we should do, and it'll be fine. I mean, it won't be fine. Like, it won't be fine. There will be for millions of people, it won't be fine. But for the people I talk to, it'll probably be fine. Compton says, with all due respect, Vietnam vets believed with their whole hearts they were doing the right thing. The substance of their hearts is immaterial. Practice defensive patience and compassion. But yeah, that's exact. Defensive patience. Like we can't, if we just start going on the offensive and shitting on people, hey radio, how you doing, bud? Then we're not going to get anywhere, right? That's the truth. You know, if we want people to listen, if I want people to listen, you know, I think I've got to just do away with this impulse, this desire to just shit on people. And I think the thing that I need to start doing, and that I am going to start doing, is when people do the traditional, like, communism never works, I'm just going to start asking people, like, where are you getting that idea from, friend? Like, where are you getting that idea from? Because I think the thing that I really want to start doing is I want people to start giving me sources. Like, I want people to start actually producing stuff and sending stuff my way and saying to me, this is where I'm getting this information from, and this is what I believe. And this is because it really is, like, the experience that I just had over this last week has genuinely convinced me that it's easy now to debunk this stuff. That, like, 40 years ago, when you're trying to debunk CIA propaganda and you're trying to debunk obvious propaganda outlets and things like this, like, it's way more difficult, and you've really got to go through, like, you got to go to a library and you got to find alternative sources and all this. And then you also need to convince people that you can't trust the CIA, right? Like, that's a big part of it. But now I think you can convince people not to trust the CIA pretty quickly. I think that's pretty easy to do. And I also think there are a lot of academics and there are a lot of people who are like, yeah, the CIA exists. Like, we should probably not just uncritically listen to what those guys have to say. Like, I think that there are historians out there and people who are just like, yeah, that's what the CIA said, but, like, what actually happened? Like my pursuit is what happened. What's the truth? And I think that it's getting easier to do. And so we just need to start trying to bring people into that. Yeah, and you're absolutely right about this, Isaac. That Saudi Arabia making peace with Iran, like that's a huge deal. Like it's an unbelievably huge deal that Saudi Arabia and Iran have reached across the table with the help of China and have shook each other's hands and said we're not going to go at each other anymore. Like this divide that has existed, we're gonna try to work through it and work together. It's enormous. Like it can't be overstated how enormous that actually is, right? Like peace in the Middle East, right? Like that's what we're talking about. Like peace in the Middle East. This is something that throughout my entire lifetime there was sort of this dangling question of will there ever be peace in the Middle East? And oh my God, of course there was never going to be peace in the Middle East while the United States was in charge because they were the ones blowing up the Middle East. So of course there was never going to be peace there. And everybody was just, in it for themselves mainly because that was the whole American ethos. But then here comes the Chinese with a bigger, broader plan that includes everybody and says to both Iran and Saudi Arabia, if you guys shake hands, I can make you rich. And I've got the proof. I've got the proof. My own nation is the proof. Like, you want to be rich? Do you want your country to look like this? Do you want to live in palaces? Do you want to live in a stable society where everybody loves what you're doing? Do you want that? Well, shake hands. And Saudi Arabia and Iran did. And it's enormous. It's an incredible story. It's an incredible, incredible story. Yeah, and the Kenyan president told Kenyans to sell the US dollar while they still can. Yep. No, and this is the other part of it. Like, the African nations have only known exploitation, colonization, death and destruction from the Americans, coups, coup attempts, all this kind of stuff. So, like, why would the Africans ever care to work with Westerners, right? Why would they ever care to work with Westerners? So I think the pivot towards China is going to just be so obvious. Like the Africans are going to see like a compassionate group of Marxists come in and actually say, hey, do you guys want to have a wealthy, stable country? Do you want a partner who's actually going to help you develop without pointing a gun at you and making demands? Do you want somebody who's going to negotiate with you? And meanwhile, the West is acting like this isn't happening. Like that's what's insane about all of it. They're acting like it's not happening. They're acting like the Chinese are going in like the Americans go into places and they're colonizing, right? Like it's insane. Cotton says, yeah, defensive patience. Don't take on the chin what is the animus of someone that comes from a wrong place. You must draw a line and prepare for self-defense against misled people. Yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. If communism does not work, why does the U.S. spend billions trying to stop it? Killed 4 million in North Korea, 3 million in Vietnam, other millions in other countries. Yeah. Well, and the truly deluded will be like, you gotta stop commies. It'll be a genocide if you don't stop the commies. So you gotta go in and stop the commies from doing the genocide that we have no evidence of them doing, but they do it because we say so. And really, in a way, that's what it is, right? So many times it is literally just like it's true because we say so. That's all. That's all they've got at the end of the day. It's just it's true because you say so. Okay. Hey, Demand Better, how you doing, bud? Yeah, you blame the world for turning their backs on the U.S. The U.S. has shown us time and time again they're bloodthirsty imperialists. Yeah, like America must be isolated. Like it's an imperative. It's like an absolute imperative. Like it has to be isolated. That what's going on in Ukraine is this moment of like, oh, if we don't isolate these guys, they're like, America is going full blown Nazi. Like it is. And we just cannot afford to pretend otherwise. Like that what's going on with the trans community, what's going on in the state legislatures, who's taking over state by state, like we are looking at some full blown Nazism that is happening, and it's gonna go that way. And I think the rest of the world sees it and understands, oh shit, like if we don't get our ducks in a row very quickly and organize very quickly and actually build defensive alliances very quickly and put up a strong unified force very quickly, we will be overwhelmed by Nazis. Like, this is what's going on. Oh, yeah, Anemone, I forgot about that. Hold on, let me pull that up. Yeah. This is a good document that Anemone put in the resources. Global trends. This is something. Here, hold on. 2, 1, 0. This is a really I saw this and then you put it in the Discord and I completely forgot to actually pull it up. This is from a publication of the National Intelligence Council. This is from March 2021. Global Trends to 2040, a more contested world. So when Americans talk about the multipolar world that's emerging, they're saying a more contested world. So yeah, like, America needs to be isolated. Intelligence does not claim infallibility for its prophecies. Intelligence merely holds that the answer which it gives is the most deeply and objectively based and carefully considered estimate. But it's all from this position of we're in a contested world. So it's like that passage from Corinthians, right? If though I may speak with the tongues of angels but have not love, I am but a clanging gong. That kind of a thing. A lesson that I myself am trying to learn. Key themes, executive summary. They go through society, social, disillusioned, informed, and divided. State, tensions, turbulence, and transformation. Right? International, more contested, uncertain, and conflict prone. Of course, like, conflict prone means countries will start doing things for themselves without our say-so. That makes it more conflict prone. Yeah, the world needs to be multipolar. The idea that it could be unipolar is insane. The idea that like 4% of the world's population should make decisions for the 96% of the world's population is insane. It's insane to do that. Like, to think that that's possible even. To think that that's even a thing that could be taken seriously. Like, it's just ridiculous. Yeah, rather than reporting what's going on around the world, they keep putting, Trump's going to prison for sure, guys. For sure Trump's going to prison. The likelihood of Trump going to prison, it's 0%. There's just literally 0% that Trump actually goes to prison. Like, he might get charged, and he might have to pay a fine. I think that that's the outcome. Like, the worst possible outcome for him is that he'll have to pay a fine. And the fine will be equal to the amount that he bribed somebody for, right? Or that he paid out somebody, right? He's not going to spend a day in jail. Like, it's just not, and this is the problem with this, is that, like, the idea that the media is pretending, like, they're just pretending. Like, it's so obvious that they're just pretending, and it's making us stupider. Like, it is. It's just making us dumber, because we keep having these dumb conversations about Trump going to prison. Oh, we're going to put Trump in prison. And not having the serious adult conversations. It's why, like, I was really talking to somebody the other day about this, how, like, Jon Stewart and, like, Dave Chappelle, you know, nightclub comedians are becoming, like, philosophers and the voice of reason in the society. And I don't think that that's happening because those guys, like, they're intelligent, obviously, but it's happening because there is no one who is credible in the society. So it's making nightclub comedians seem more credible. That there are no philosophers, there are no politicians, there are no priests. There's no one who has any credibility in the society any longer. And so the society is literally turning to nightclub comedians to get their moral input and to figure out how they should view the world and how they should think about the world, because there's no one else. Like, there's, like, Jordan Peterson, I guess. But, like, it's so fucking wild to be alive in this society where people are like, did you hear what Jon Stewart had to say? Well, you mean the guy who had, like, a fucking late night TV show that was just, like, dick jokes and talking about politics? Like, this guy should not be your moral guiding light. This guy should not be the guy who's asking the hard questions. He shouldn't be. It's crazy that he is. It's insane that he is. Right? Like, that means there isn't a single journalist worth listening to. Like, flat out. It's wild. Lawnmower Man, good to see you, bud. Reading through Chomsky's Who Rules the World right now. I know he's not a Marxist, but it's a breezy, concise summation of the utter hypocrisy and projection of U.S. imperialism. Absolutely. I'll say it until I'm blue in the face, man. Chomsky is absolutely useful. Like, absolutely useful. He's one of the most prolific writers. He's certainly one of America's most cited intellectuals. Domestically, I think he's, like, unimpeachable. I don't think you can say a word to him. I think he just doesn't do the work that much when it comes to international observations, especially communist countries. I just don't think he has a very... I think his view of what happened in Soviet Union and in any communist nation, right? I think it's just shallow. And I think that there's a reason for that, right? I think that it's not like he's making claims about these places, really. That, like, when he does make commentary, it's pretty clear that it's a shallow interpretation, because his focus is on his own country, for a very simple reason, because he thinks that there's a possibility that we could do something about it. So he doesn't really bother with a critique of another nation. Why even bother with the critique of what happened under communism, what happened under that kind of thing, right? There's nothing you could do about it. Like, we should be focusing on ourselves. And that's essentially what Chomsky does, and he does it very well. That if you want a critique of socialist and communist nations that's a little bit more robust, then you got to look at Michael Parenti. That Michael Parenti does the work, and yeah. So if you take Chomsky and you take Parenti and put them together, you're doing pretty well. Yet the BRICS countries de-dollarizing trade is absolutely a good move, for sure. Rich people and corporations don't get punished in capitalist justice systems, of course. So one thing that's going to happen today, guys, and I'll be upfront about it, at 8 o'clock, we're getting a phone call from Barry Weissletter, the Federal Secretary of Socialist Action. We're going to have a conversation with him about what the hell is going on in the world, and maybe what the hell we can do to continue organizing, and what the hell we can do, right? We are getting into, like, protest season. Like that protest, you can see that it's already kicked off in places like France. You can see that it's already kicked off in places around the world. And so we've got to, we are now getting into the nicer weather. The nicer weather is going to bring people out. And we're going to have a conversation about, well, what the hell is going on in the protest movements? What the hell can we do? Because it seems as though in North America there's this deer in the headlights kind of phenomenon going on. Humor is a pretty effective means of being subversive and getting people to listen and reflect. I mean, I would say that just telling the truth, you know, just telling the truth. I saw people condemning and quipping negatively about Vietnam and its government because they're expanding trans medical care, and these were not exactly right-wingers. Yeah, I mean, like, the society is fairly right-wing. People call themselves progressive, but then, you know, will support military interventions and war, you know? So progressive means, like, I want healthcare, seems to be. This is hilarious right here. They set a guillotine in front of Bezos' mansion. I'm going to play another one. I have this one in my head, so I'm going to play it. I was just a little boy when my mom and dad divorced. Through my tantrums, cried my tears, I'd keep their vows by force. Now that I'm an older man, I see it had to be this way. And my love for them, it keeps on growing each and every day. Time passed me by so swiftly, I could have been a better man. Every day I'm trying to do the best things that I can. And though they're not the people I expected they would be, well, I love them all the same. I just want them to be free. 10 years, me and my wife, we traveled round the world. Sacred vows and shared regrets, they filled our lives with hope. Then one day she tells me a man is not for her. Those 10 years are a memory now, and my love for her still stirs. 'Cause time passed me by so swiftly, I could have been a better man. And every day I'm trying to do the best things that I can. And though she's not the person I expected she would be, well, I love her just the same. I just want her to be free. My love had a little girl, a scrappy tomboy type. I watched her blossom like a flower, but she felt not quite right. Then one day she tells me she's a young man, not a girl. Well, I picked her up and held her close, then sent my son into the world. Time passed me by so swiftly, I could have been a better man. And every day I'm trying to do the best things that I can. And though he's not the person I expected he would be, well, I love him all the same. I just want him to be free. And though they're not the people I expected they would be, well, I love them all the same. I just want them to be free. Ah, man, I really love that song. I really do. You know what I love most about that song? I feel like it takes the libertarian ethos of freedom and throws it back over on its face. And all these guys walking around talking about freedom, but how they're scared of trans people. I'm just like, what about this? How come they're not free to do that? Freedom for everything except that, right? Like freedom except not for trans people. Okay. Cotton says, by the way, the latest mass shooter did so for being fired from his job, and he got his intended targets. I have deeply mixed feelings about it. Yeah. Like, how do we think this is going to go, guys? Like, how do we think this is going to go? Like we've got a spiking homelessness rate. The country is awash in guns. Suicide rates going crazy. The suicide rate's going crazy. The number one cause of death in the society right now is drug overdose. Suicide is like number 3 or 4, right? So much for cancer and heart disease and all that kind of stuff. Now it's turning into drug overdose. Now it's turning into suicide. Like, it doesn't take like a big genius to be like, oh, someone who's willing to take a gun and shoot themselves with it, or take a whole bunch of drugs and overdose and die, might also be willing to pick up a gun and go fuck some people up in a state of vengeance, right? Just like a state of vengeance might overwhelm somebody. Humans are motivated by 3 things. There's only 3 motivators, right? Only 3. You've got love, you've got power, you've got vengeance. Like, what do you think is going to happen? You depower people, you take away all their power, you strip away everything they have, you give them nothing to love, you give them no hope whatsoever that they will ever love, that love will ever come their way at all, and that they will ever have any power whatsoever in the society. Well, what's left? What's left? And I hate to break it to you, you can't have a society based on vengeance. You can't have a vengeance-based society. It's not going to work. It's just not going to work. right? This isn't a fucking video game. Like, it's gonna collapse. It's gonna disintegrate. It's gonna fall apart. And stuff like this, where they're putting guillotines in front of Bezos' mansion, like, yep. Oh, well, thank you, Anemone. I appreciate that comment. Beautiful voice. That's a very kind thing for you to say. I know, another shooting, like another one, right? The only time I really report on shootings is when somebody does like a compilation or like a collection, so you could see it happen over time. Because it's now become like a meta phenomenon, right? Yep, don't forget food. They're happy to let us starve. Absolutely. Totally fine society. Totally normal and functional. Yeah. The U.S. needs to be sent to the corner for a while so the world can have peace. Yeah. And I think it's happening. Like, I really think it's just like the rest of the world is very obviously isolating the United States. Let's quickly move on. And come on. How do we not talk about this right away? I'm surprised you guys haven't already brought it up. So here's the story. Here's the story. This is Caitlin Johnstone, of course. The Dalai Lama is a creepy asshole. My absolute favorite, right? My absolute favorite. So the Dalai Lama in public, hanging out around people, right? You see it. Little boy, right? Gives him a smooch, right? Gives him a little smooch, but then sticks his tongue out and has the kid telling him to suck his tongue. There's a really gross video going around of the Dalai Lama kissing a young boy on the lips and telling him to suck his tongue while an adult audience looks on approvingly. A tweet from Tibet.net last month shows a video clip of the Tibetan spiritual leader with a child and says that the encounter took place during his meeting with students and members of M3M Foundation. Though Tibet.net's clip cuts out the sexually inappropriate parts of the encounter. Well, like, eye-opening piece, Friendly Feudalism, the Tibet Myth by Michael Parenti, right? Yeah, what is it with power-adjacent clergymen and child molestation anyway? As Michael Parenti noted in 2003, sexual abuse was commonplace in the tyrannical environment of feudal Tibet, which over which the 14th Dalai Lama would still preside had it not been forcibly annexed by the PRC in the 1950s. While the slogan of Free Tibet has long been used as propaganda bludgeoned by the West against China particularly, and against communism generally, the truth of the matter is that Tibet was quantifiably a far more tyrannical and oppressive place to live back when it was supposedly free. This is my thing, man. Like, see this picture? See this picture? All we gotta do from now on, Free Tibet. There you go. Free Tibet. You put Free Tibet right here. Boom. Free Tibet. There you go. Here's the freedom. This is the freedom that you're talking about. These weird little pedophiles, these weird creepy losers, right? Just like rapists and pedophiles. Free Tibet, though, right? Absolutely, we got to get back to this. This is what we need in the world, for sure. Yeah. The anti-China crowd working overtime to perform unprecedented feats of mental gymnastics to justify this. Well, but he's already apologized. That's the thing. The Dalai Lama released a statement. He confessed. He apologized. So, like, it's over. Like, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do? Like, we all watched him do this. So, and if this is what he's doing in public, like, if this is what he's doing in front of all of us, if he doesn't have if he no longer has the wherewithal, if he no longer has the, like, cognizant awareness to be able to understand that doing this in public with a child is wrong, right? What's he doing behind the scenes? What's he doing when the cameras are off, right? How's that working? Yeah, free Tibet from those non-evil pedophiles, exactly. Hey, Dave, how you doing? Take care, good to see you. Yeah, dude. What? I don't know if he was on Epstein's list, but, like, okay. Like, not every Catholic priest went to Jeffrey Epstein's island, I assume. They've got their own pedophile ring going on. I bet you they do, like, little swaps, right? That you've got theocratic pedophile rings, and then you've got secular pedophile rings. Guys, I never actually thought, if somebody had told me 10 years ago that I would actually be openly talking about how our society has multiple pedophile sex rings in it, I would be like, nah, that sounds like some kooky conspiracy shit. But like, here we are, right? Here we are. The proof's on the table. You can't deny it. They're all connected to it. They're all covering for one another, right? Free Tibet, though. Dalai Lama, refugees should go back to their countries. George W. Bush has a good heart. Yeah, I like having sex with little boys. Like, this is the Dalai Lama. There you go. Ridiculous. He also endorsed Pinochet, of course. Dave says, just watching the fall of the petrodollar empire gleefully. Yeah, I mean, it's happening. It's happening, dude. Yeah, Dalai Lama support. But this is great, Tinker. What kind of defense is that? Like, Dalai Lama supporters are saying sticking your tongue out is a Tibetan tradition? That's like saying Catholic priests... putting your cock inside of the bum of a little boy is just a tradition. That's just a Catholic tradition, you know. Stripping a young boy and having sex with him is just the Catholic way. What kind of defense is that? It's like the worst. That makes it worse. Like, how can you possibly think that that makes it better? Oh, it's just a tradition to stick your tongue out and have little boys suck it. That's just the traditional Tibetan way. What? Free Tibet. Like, fuck you, dude. Like, fuck you. That makes it way grosser. Yeah, you know what? You know what'll make this better? People just don't understand. No, you guys, you don't... I know that it looks bad, okay? But you gotta understand that having sex with little children and abusing children is systemic and historical in their culture. That you just need to understand that, and that makes it better. You're gonna understand things a little bit clearer if you just understand that this isn't the Dalai Lama abusing a boy in front of everybody once. This is a long systemic history built into their culture. There. Now that you understand that, that's better. Free Tibet. Dude, I wish that we were back in this territory where Richard Gere looking for the gerbil. I remember when I was growing up, people were like, they heard this gerbil story, right? And for those of you who are not in the know, right? The story is that Richard Gere put a gerbil up his ass, right? There you go. And when that story spread around, everyone was like, oh my goodness. Oh, the degeneracy. And now I'm just like, man, I gotta tell you, if it came out that, like, I don't know, who's somebody? If it came out that Joe Biden was getting gerbils up his butt, I'd be like, that's fine. I don't care about that at all. Put a gerbil up your butt, for sure. Although, poor gerbil, right? That's my position, actually, now that I think about it. Poor gerbil. Oh, that's bad for the gerbil. But comparatively, give me the choice between the gerbil and what this shit's going on. Brutal. But we're normal. Everything's totally normal. Everything's totally fine. We're a normal country doing normal things. Just having a normal time. Normal. John, this incident is but the tip of the... Of course it is. Regarding the Dalai Lama. The history is apparently much worse, of course. No, this is exactly what I was saying, right? That if this is what he's doing in front of cameras, in front of everyone to see recorded and have all of that seen, what is happening behind the scenes? It's so obviously like just like this huge mountain that we're all just seeing the very tip of. It's so clearly the case that this is not an outlying thing. This is not just a guy who is like maybe he had like a little moment of like dementia or something and did something. No, that's obviously not what's going on here. And it's like, we're getting crazier. Like, we're getting crazier. The idea that anyone would even attempt to defend this is just crazy. Crazy to me. Absolutely crazy to me. Yeah, we have MPs out in Taiwan now, too, to learn from them about how to deal with China. Why do we have to go to Taiwan to learn how to deal with China? Like, I feel so worldly knowing this about Tibetan culture. Exactly. Yeah, dude. Yeah, he likes kids. Almost like putting people in power is bad. Yeah, dude. Byproducts of a sick society, for sure. Like, we are absolutely degenerate. Like, degenerate. And what's so funny is that, like, the people who are supporting this kind of behavior, like, we live in this really weird, odd, strange time where, like, if men find women attractive, they're perverts. But if people in power have sex with children, that seems fine. Like, it just seems like there's a really weird thing going on. Did the Dalai Lama go to Epstein's Island too? You're like the second person to ask. I have no idea. Maybe Caitlin Johnstone. Hold on. Epstein. Nah. She for sure would mention it. Like, if he was in the Epstein thing, like, oh, I used to think it odd that the Dalai Lama had nothing to offer but vapid kindergarten pop spirituality. Then I learned he was a well-paid CIA agent. So we don't need to worry about the Epstein connection. He's just a CIA asset. Right? The agency paid Dalai Lama $15,000. Fantastic. Fantastic. People should stop looking up to this freak. Yeah, dude. Like, imagine, like, what a strange and weird life the Dalai Lama has had. Just like a weirdo wearing a robe, walking around. Why is everyone in the room cheering? Yeah, we're a society of pedos. Like, it's just power worship, you know? It's power worship. We love power. That's what we're all about. It's what we're all about. Oh my God. What a wild and ridiculous time. I want to sing another song. Imagine having enlightenment just from being born. Yeah, the enlightenment of sticking your tongue in a kid's mouth, right? Enlightenment. We've done it. You know what? This is what I want. Leaving on jet plane. I've been singing this one a lot recently. So this guy's the reincarnation of the Buddha. Yet turns out the Buddha is just a complete and total pedophile. Who knew? Who knew, dude? That must be like stage 4 on the path to enlightenment, right? Have sex with children. Here's the greatest non sequitur of all time, right? I don't know why I want to sing this one, but I do. All my bags are packed, I'm ready to go. I'm standing here outside your door. I hate to wake you up to say goodbye, but the dawn is breaking, it's early morn. The taxi's waiting, blowing his horn. Already I'm so lonesome I could die. So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. 'Cause I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh babe, I hate to go. There's so many times I've let you down. So many times I've played around. I tell you now, they don't mean a thing. I'll sing for you. When I come back, I'll bring your wedding ring. So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. 'Cause I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh babe, I hate to go. Now the time has come to leave you one more time. Let me kiss you and close your eyes. I'll be on my way. Dream about the days to come when I won't have to leave alone. About the times I won't have to say. So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. 'Cause I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh babe, I hate to go. But I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh babe, I hate to go. Oh, Amanda, how's that for good timing? How's that for good timing? You coming in while I'm singing a song? That's beautiful. I don't listen to James Taylor enough. Who's James Taylor? I'm open, by the way, to learn songs. So if you guys think that there's a cover that you want to hear, I'm open for it. Like, I'm not gonna... Somebody's got me trying to learn... Somebody's got me trying to learn Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. Come on, I've got it right here. This one here. This is Starting Over by Chris Stapleton. That's I'm going to try to learn. I'll probably be performing that one. Maybe not this week, but probably next week. And... Well, Anemone, beautiful voice. Look, that's very kind of you to say. That's very kind of you to say. I don't know, guys. I'm in a singing place. I'm in a singing mood. So you're gonna hear me sing throughout, I think, over the next little while. And I don't think there's... Could you do Your City Gave Me Asthma? Let's take a look. Let's take a look. Copy, boink, copy, boink, boink, boink. Wilbur Soot? All right, bud. I'll take a look at it. I mean, I'm not going to try to crack it out right now, because you guys don't want to see that, for sure. But boink, there you go, on the list. I got no problem with that. All right. I love this little comic. Can I buy a house? I already bought all the houses. Well, how much to buy one off you? More than you could ever afford. Is the rent cheap at least? No, it's double the mortgage, so I can buy more houses. We truly live in the best economic system possible. Yes, officer, that's the one that was annoying me. Is this the name of the song, Grinning? In my mind, in going to Carolina? In my mind, I'm going to Carolina, probably. Like... What a strange and unusual world we live in, right? Just a strange and unusual place. All right, here we go. It's on the list. Boom. So that means I've got 3 songs, guys. So we're good. We're good. Unless somebody out there is like absolutely... Yeah, Jet Plane was John Denver, you bet. John Denver, man, I've been singing a lot of John Denver recently. Like, what an American poet, you know? Just absolutely, like, at the top level for sure. Like, amongst the greatest of the poets that have ever existed in America. That Leaving on a Jet Plane, Annie's Song, oh my God, I cannot believe, Country Roads. Country Roads is probably what he's most well known for. Yeah, John Lennon, Imagine. Like, oh, still though. Oh. Imagine there's no country. It's easy if you try. Let's just do it. I think I could just do that one. Right? What a beautiful sentiment. CIA probably took them both out. Yeah. I mean, let's not bullshit, right? It's probably the truth. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Whoa, imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. Imagine all the people living life in peace. Oh, you may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or a brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. Oh, you may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will join us, and the world will live as one, and the world will live as one, and the world will live as one. Compton. Right as we're ending, the beautiful piece, Imagine, by John Lennon. I cannot stand the Beatles! What? What's wrong with the Beatles? What's wrong with the Beatles, Compton? Come on, it's a beautiful piece. It's a beautiful piece. I feel like some of my music is inspired by this very song. I think that you can hear a lot of this song in Antarctica. I think that Antarctica is covered in ice owes a great debt to this particular song. So there, Compton. Yeah. Don't you feel silly now? Turns out that John Lennon beat Compton with a belt. That's it's created a deep-seated, anytime he hears the Beatles, any Beatles song, he's just like, no, Lennon, please, God, no. Right? Or let's even darker still, maybe Compton is the man who shot John Lennon. Huh? We don't know. That guy's still alive. Compton could be listening from prison right now. And just like I'm playing John Lennon, he's just like, oh, fuck. Oh, there's a reason I shot that John Lennon. Got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm grown? I looked up at the crimson smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point of feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams, where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet, when death's sweet kiss comes to sweep me off my feet. I hope by then we've learned a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, so everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? When everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And covered in ice. Antarctica is covered in ice. You know, I know I say it after every time, but I really do believe it to be true. I'll always believe, you know. I'll always believe. Even as the sea levels come up, even as the deserts spread, even as the forests burn, no matter how dark it gets, I will always believe that we can do it. That we can do it. That we can humble ourselves before the might of the world and the might of the universe. That we can acknowledge the power of the earth that we live upon. We can do it. We don't need to rely on ourselves. We don't need to be clever. That the earth was a garden before we even got here. It created a garden for us. It did it all by itself, without any help, with no help at all. The earth is more than capable of healing itself. Thank you very much. All we have to do is let it. And what that means is that instead of thinking that we can be clever and use the very systems that created this imbalance with the universe and the world that created us in the first place, all we have to do is stop. I actually think it's quite beautiful. You want some Britney Spears, Anemone? Sure. Sure. For you, Anemone, I got one good Britney Spears. I need Britney. Come on, we know what we're going for. Hit me, baby, one more time. Right? And we need the chords, of course. Chords. Easily, without question, one of the creepiest things that we ever did as a people was watch Britney Spears basically be a child slave in front of us, right? Just be a child slave in front of us. Is this good? Am I here? Well, whatever. I'll just go along with it. I've never seen someone sing Britney Spears like you, John. You know why, Anemone? You know why? Because people don't take Britney seriously. They don't take Britney seriously. When people do covers of Britney Spears, they're trying to make fun of her. That's what they're trying to do. They're not actually honoring. And like, this song is actually creepy as shit. Like, it's a crazy song when you listen to it. Right? Command Genius, good to see you, bud. Didn't expect music. Expect the unexpected. Expect the unexpected. Yeah, radio man, I feel you here. Just be mellow. Sit in a field, right? Oh baby, baby, how was I supposed to know? Something wasn't right here. Oh baby, baby, I shouldn't have let you go. Now you're out of sight and show me how you want it to be. Tell me, babe, I need to know now what we got. My loneliness is killing me. I must confess I still believe when I'm not with you I lose my mind. Give me a sign. Hit me, baby, one more time. Oh baby, baby, the reason I breathe is you. Girl, you got me blinded. Oh pretty baby, there's nothing that I wouldn't do. It's not the way I planned it. Show me how you want it to be. Tell me, babe, I need to know now what we got. My loneliness is killing me. I must confess I still believe when I'm not with you I lose my mind. Give me a sign. Hit me, baby, 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 one more time. That song's so kick-ass. Like, that is a kick-ass song, right? That is a fucking kick-ass song. That's what I love about that song. Like, we're so used to that song being delivered to us by, like, you know, fucking a 15-year-old schoolgirl wearing a Catholic school uniform, right? Just, like, basically being weirdly slutty in front of us as, like, a kid. Even when I was 15, like, when this song came out, and I was, like, that age, I thought that song was weird. And looking back on it, that song's fucking weird. That song is fucking weird. Thank you, Anemone. I appreciate it. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe. Hit the bells, hit the whistles, do the stuff, right? Hit the things. Like, this song is oddly pedophilic coming from that figure, coming from that character, right? But, like, the song itself is literally, like, it's, like, actually a heartrending, like, impassioned plea for, like, for romance and love. Just like this, like, oh, like, I always have, like, a movie script that I'm writing in my head where a cadre of young women, probably Gen Z women, go around and kill billionaires. And I think that this, as my version of the song, would be super kick-ass in that movie. That there would be this, like, great scene where one of the women, or maybe all of the women, were going around and just, like, entering a compound, right? And just, like, while Hit Me Baby One More Time was playing. Like, hit me baby one more time. I think that would be great. And I think people would like it. I think it would do very well for audiences. I think audiences would love to go see a movie where a bunch of super hot women killed billionaires. I think that would be great, that we would watch them invade Jeff Bezos' mansion and just, like, we would all be like, fuck yeah, let's go. Let's go, Brandon. Awesome. Sounds good. Can't imagine why I get shadow banned on these platforms, eh? Man, why? I don't get why YouTube shadow banned me, and I don't get why TikTok keeps banning me. It seems so strange. So strange. So the Bud Light fiasco, says Compton, and Jack Daniels fiasco, I think marketing is actually two-pronged. Yeah, you got the progressive pander, but I think the reactionary fits are also likely paid for. I don't actually know enough about this to comment on it, but I think you're probably right, Cotton. Like, I don't think that anything happens in the media space that isn't, like, planned. You know what I mean? Like the Trump indictment is a good example of this. Or, like, remember when the FBI invaded Trump Mar-a-Lago, right? And everybody was like, oh my God. I actually think that Donald Trump is purposefully allowing a lot of this stuff to happen to him. Keeps him in the news, right? Keeps him at the top of mind, keeps him in the cycle. Like, I think that Trump understands how media works, and I think he understands that a big part of how the media cycle actually functions is penetration. That the word is penetration, right? Because there's just so much going on that and you can get lost in like a little corner of it. You can just get lost in like a little slice of it. And I think that Donald Trump understands that it's not about having a constant, persistent thing, because no one, even billionaires, don't have the energy or the power to do that. It's about having something that punches up, that just goes poof, so that everybody stops looking like this across the horizontal at all of the noise that's going on, and you punch something up so that everybody looks up at it, if only for one moment. And I think that Donald Trump understands that it's about penetration, it's about having the whole of the audience look up at you. And I think that's why he allowed because like, really think about the Mar-a-Lago one is the easiest one for me to think about this way. That like, the FBI probably contacted Donald Trump and the organization were like, oh, hey, you took some files, right? You were the president, and it's your purview, you're the president, but you took some files and you didn't return them. Can you return them? And Donald Trump was just like, no. And the FBI was like, okay, but like, you're no longer the president, and we need those files back, like, and we will come and get them, right? We will come and get them. And Donald Trump was like, then come and get them, right? Well, why? Because it made the news, and it blew up everything. Everybody got to make a whole stir of it. It was everywhere for a very fractional moment of time. The news cycle was about Donald Trump. And so to tie that back into what you were saying here, Compton, I do think that media, and I think Disney has been doing this all along with all of its diversity swapping and all that kind of stuff, that it's about just getting a little punch up. It's about making everybody look at you no matter what, right? No matter what. Even if it's like, boo, you suck. Well, you're still looking at me. Like, you're still looking at me. That's all it is. Yeah, Usher's first music video, super weird. He's shirtless for half the video at like 15. Yeah. I'm down for this movie. Fantastic. 1 ticket holder. Perfect. The Crypt Keeper went to Northern Ireland today to try to keep the peace. Like, the Crypt Keeper? Like, is this a nickname that you're giving to someone? Or is this, like, the actual Crypt Keeper? Like, Tales from the Crypt? Because I don't understand the story then, dude. Who are you talking about? Yeah, Trump's a show, man. Yeah, for sure. Biden. Oh, my God. I love it. So you're telling me, Tinker, that Biden took a plane to Northern Ireland, but didn't go to Ohio. Is that what I just heard? I just heard that Joe Biden went all the way to Northern Ireland, but couldn't be arsed to go to Ohio. Is that right? The movie sounds like a better version of Spring Breakers. I never actually saw Spring Breakers. Well, he's Irish. I mean, I guess so. Like, he's not really from Ireland. Like, it's... Yeah. No, what Hollywood did to Justin Bieber is pretty disturbing. You're right about that, dude. Like, there's videos online of him at an award show and his actress twice his age grabbing at him. No, I've seen plenty of that. Nah, dude, like, people are weirdos. Like, people are fucking weirdos. There's a lot of goddamn weirdos going on in the world. Did I already do the like, share, subscribe, hit the bells, hit the whistles? Like, how many viewers do I have? I apparently only have 1 concurrent viewer right now. So that's wrong. Like, unless you all just decided to leave all at once. Well, 10 concurrent viewers, 11 likes. All right, you're off the hook. That's weird. That's really weird. Everybody all at once just decided, time to go. We're gone. To me, the news of the day, the biggest news that's going on, without a doubt, that everybody should be talking about. Like, anytime anybody starts babbling at me about how, like, oh, well, communism doesn't work and capitalism's the greatest, the International Monetary Fund, out with its latest World Economic Outlook. The GDP growth forecasts for 2023 and 2024 are in. Here are the numbers for this year. USA, 1.6%. Germany and UK, recession. Russia, 0.7%. China, 5.2%. India, 5.9%. China is growing more than 3 times faster than the United States. But American media keeps saying that China's economy will never surpass the United States. The delusion in the so-called free societies is astonishing. It is pretty astonishing. Yeah, they aren't forecasts, they're telling us. Yeah, like, and they're not doing anything to stop it. You know, they're not doing anything to sort of roll out of it. Because all of the things that they would need to do would be to invest in the society, right? Right? They would need to invest in the society in a serious way. They would actually need to, like, spend money and, like, build infrastructure, build capacity. But, like, they're too busy dealing with derailments and shit. Yeah, another mass shooting in Kentucky. Yeah, for sure. Kids. I remember kids. I watched Kids when I was, like, 15, 16. I didn't really understand it at the time. I didn't really, like, get it because I was very, like, I was a fundamentalist Christian type. So my big takeaway of Kids was, like, oh, these people are going to hell. And, like, as I've gotten older, I've thought on that movie and been like, nah. What, is that the employment-related one, or is that new? I don't know. This is from S.L. Canthan. Like, I just love some of the memes that come out in the culture. During the pandemic, we had a fleeting and muted glimpse of what public services could be like. Extended unemployment, expanded Medicaid, child tax credits, WAFH. It's why it's been so difficult to take anything seriously since then. We all know the scarcity is manufactured. And that's really the truth. All of the scarcity that exists in the society is completely manufactured. And I feel like this is the big, like, thing. Like, what I love about, like, just random people out in the world can articulate things in such a way that takes big concepts and big statements and big ideas and just... That the truth is that the scarcity is manufactured. That we could easily remove all of this scarcity. We could easily make it so that everyone had access to everything that they needed for their life. We know it's true. Like, we know it. It's obvious. It's directly in front of our face. But it's all just manufactured. The movie Kids was a movie that was essentially, it came out in like the early 90s, maybe the late 80s, and it was just about, like, following a group of, like, city kids during the upswing of the AIDS epidemic. That's really what the movie is about. It's about 1995, great. It follows a group of kids who clearly have no, like, parental figures, really. Like, they just kind of they're just existing as they are existing, and nobody is stopping them from doing anything that they want to do. And so they're just drinking and smoking and partying and living and getting AIDS and having sex with one another and spreading AIDS around. Like, that's what it was. And I think it really is, like, it's one of those movies that's, like, kind of like a historical fiction. That's sort of how I think about that movie, Kids. That it's like they're trying to capture a picture of what life is at this moment in time for these people. it's very like hopeless. Hopeless would be the word. Just sort of harrowing in a way. Like no glory, no glorification, no sense of anything except sort of partying to burn out. It's a very Gen X kind of a movie, if you ask me. That like I've been talking a lot about Gen X recently because it is starting to go around that like, hey, for example, I just did a TikTok because somebody was like, hey, how come we shit on boomers and we shit on millennials and even Gen Z, but Gen X seems to get a pass? And it's because Gen X is trapped. They've always been trapped. Like, they've never had a period of time when they have ever been in the driver's seat. And there's no sense amongst them that was ever going to happen, right? That they literally were just, like, dealing with being overwhelmed by these psychopathic boomers, right? Yeah, food has to be scarce, because if you're not starving, why would you work for a capitalist? Exactly. Like, so it's all just to maintain the power of the capitalist class. Yeah, your parents are Gen X, of course. Good to see you, Santora. Come and See. Yeah, Come and See is a crazy, crazy movie. Crazy, crazy movie. Like, it's it's interesting watching. Holy cow, Cotton. Sorry, I got to talk about this. Holy cow, Cotton. Cotton lives close to the Kentucky shooting. Your wife drove by it as it was happening? Holy fuck, dude. Like, holy fuck, dude. Wow. That's pretty close to the mark, eh? That's pretty close to the bone. Jesus Christ. Like, bro, I hope you're doing okay. I hope she's doing okay. Like, that's a little slice too close, if you ask me. Holy cow. Yeah, he lost his job and killed his bosses. I just really hate to understand, or really hate to say I understand that rage. Yeah. I feel like I've been let go. I've had people fire me because I wouldn't, like, when I was working in funeral services, the guy that fired me because I refused to have my wages stolen. Like, that was really it. I refused to let him steal from me. That's what it came down to. And like, he probably had other opinions or whatever, but who cares? He's a thief. And so he let me go. He fired me. And I can tell you in that moment, I definitely had some like fantasies, right? I definitely had some like, but all you got to do is like layer onto it. All you got to do is layer onto it this idea of like you've got nothing on the other end, right? Like when those sorts of things happen to you when you're pretty young, you're just like, oh, okay, like I'll just whatever. But if you're like 40, like if you're 50, you know, can you imagine like just being fired from a job when you're 50 in this fucking economy? Like, yeah, I'm glad your wife is safe too, Cotton. That's crazy. Well, I'm glad. Oof. Yep, capitalism's the greatest ever, even though it drives people to murderous rage. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's nuts. Like, it's just nuts. She heard it. Holy cow. Holy cow. Like, that's wild, dude. That is wild. Like, just... Like, we are... Seems as though the whole thing's coming apart, eh? Seems like the whole thing is coming apart. Like, constantly. Just one step after another. Just seems like the whole thing is coming apart. And, like, I feel like so much of what's going on is that it's staying in the abstract. For a lot of people, it's still in the abstract space. That they are essentially isolated or protected. That there are, like, one of the things I've been thinking about recently about like our media and our media personalities is like how actually isolated these people are. That we're literally watching millionaires talk about things And like these people are deluded and detached by definition. That sometimes you get voices in the conversation who are trying to penetrate that delusion, like the aura of delusion that exists. But like there's just like no one who's allowed into the conversation who is just like a working class person, who's literally just like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Like, go work these jobs. What are you even talking about? Like, that's the big thing that I think could be said to a lot of these people. Like, what are you even talking about? And like, a lot of the solutions they come up with are these just detached, delusional solutions. Like, flood the area with cops. like that's something that we're supposed to legitimately take seriously. It's crazy. Apparently he killed a good friend of the governor at the bank. Jeez. I don't think there's a limit to the mass shooting in the minds of capitalists. What's a few dozen people per day in the face of a 0.5% increase in profits? Yeah, and I mean, if you guys are familiar with the Tennessee protests, right? Like, it's pretty clear that the state legislators are not actually responding rationally. Like, these are like literally massive high-scale protests that are happening. Like 1,000 people showing up at the Tennessee state legislature, and what's happening? People are getting expelled. They're expelling MPs. They're expelling people from it. It's crazy. Ugh. I'm fine. My wife is rarely okay. Being a trans person and all, she's insanely strong and durable. Oh. I'm glad to hear it, man. Like, this is so, like, there does come a point where we got to start asking, like, what is it going to take for some of these guys to actually start thinking, like, okay, we got to do something. Like, we got to do something. Like, we can't continue living this way. And you've got, like, you do have huge protests happening. You do have people who are moving in and doing stuff, right? Good news for trans rights in America, at least with many of the bans and moves against them failing to last in court. I mean, we could hope that that's going to actually work out, but like, I'm more or less of the opinion that the far right's just going to take matters into their own hands. I absolutely adore this. This picture's so crazy. Just Joe Biden sitting on a skeleton throne. So fucking wild. This one's from Rainer Shea. It's been a little while since I've read a Rainer Shea. Should take me a little while. And then we're expecting a phone call from Barry. Barry Weissletter, Federal Secretary of Socialist Action, to talk about what's going on in the world. The social system in which we live is one big machine of parasitism. Its purpose is to perpetuate profits, whether that entails allowing a pandemic to take millions of lives, destroying entire countries, or sacrificing the biosphere. The danger this system creates for itself is that because it places profit above all else, it cultivates the circumstances for its own demise. A system that can't stop consuming, exploiting, and accumulating is one that can't sustain a sufficient social base. This is what we're seeing with the rise of the resistance to the Ukraine proxy war, a revolt which has been emerging within the USA's own borders. It's a revolutionary development because it represents the coming of the stage in the class struggle where the imperial structure has deteriorated too much to be able to bribe most of the people into compliance. Previous uprisings, like the Seattle anti-WTO revolt or Occupy Wall Street, represented only less advanced manifestations of this. Revolts were smaller, and less ideologically developed parts of the population did what they could do to rebel amid the constraints of their circumstances. With the combination of crisis the working class is now experiencing, where their government has started a war which further damages which furthers the damage from 5 decades of progressively declining living standards, today's mass movement has the potential to set off an uprising, which the ruling class can't neutralize. This is not only because of the unprecedented degree within our lifetime to which the U.S. working class is being harmed by capitalism, but because the cause the workers are now rallying around has an inescapably revolutionary character. It was possible for the Democratic Party to co-opt the anti-police movement, but not a movement to end the party's own foreign policies. The Democrats have been trying to apply their counterinsurgency model from the 2020 protests to this year's anti-NATO movement, but the most they've been able to do is convince a limited number of anti-war people to engage in cancellation activities against the movement's most radical organizations and individuals. These organizations and individuals include Rage Against the War Machine, the PCUSA, and Scott Ritter. And these types, who support the anti-NATO movement in theory, while obsessively working to wreck the movement in practice, represent a minor online element when you look at the larger story. The in-person organizational actors, which have had the biggest presence, the most media attention, and the most success at bringing in those not already involved, are the ones from Rage Against the War Machine, whose coalition is based around the most radical platform that's been put forth throughout this struggle. These actors are becoming the leaders of this movement because they seek not to use the anti-war cause as another tool for boosting the insular, exclusionary projects which dominate the modern American left, but as a way to expand the struggle beyond the left. They're doing this because they see a truth which the rad libs refuse to recognize, that most of the US population has a primary material interest, not in maintaining the system, but in replacing it with workers' democracy. Both the communists and the libertarians in the anti-war movement essentially know this, with the libertarians only having a different idea of what the solution to the workers' living standards crisis should be. Opposition towards the war is a gateway for these kinds of conservatives to recognize the reality of our conditions, which no longer resemble the 1950s, where a labor aristocracy was dominant. Today, the poverty which the black and indigenous communities have always been especially subjected to under the USA has both become more severe and been expanded to at least a plurality of the white population. As the empire has declined, it's had to shove ever greater parts of the core's people out of the privileged socioeconomic circle. The outcome is that almost 2/3 of Americans are now living paycheck to paycheck. There's a reason why I say that even if someone claims to be anti-imperialist, this claim of theirs is meaningless when they still act like the conditions of the USA's people are like they were 70 years ago. Because when you refuse to see that the majority in the core are at this stage compatible with revolution, you won't be effective at resisting the empire. The rad-lib tendency I'm talking about is so determined to stick with this outdated analysis that decades ago their guiding theoretrician, J. Sakai, preemptively came up with a rationale for them to refuse to see what the majority in the core now have revolutionary potential. In his 1983 polemic, Settlers, Sakai claimed that the white population won't develop revolutionary consciousness no matter how much their conditions deteriorate, because they had supposedly betrayed the revolutionary cause during capitalism's last great period of crisis in the 1930s. This was a lie told by a wrecker. Not only did working class people of all colors engage in far more solidarity than Sakai's limited historical account makes it appear, but the crisis the working class now faces has an important difference between the one from a century ago. This time, there won't and can't be a New Deal. Profits have declined too much for the bourgeoisie to be able to afford to bring back social democracy. A class compromise of that scale is never happening again, and the conditions of the workers can therefore only continue to deteriorate. History's trajectory can only keep making larger the proposition of society that's compatible with revolutionary politics, which is already a majority. Of course, the anti-revolutionary viewpoint of the Radlibs is now becoming in danger of losing its dominance over our organizing spaces. They're promoting an idea that's increasingly detached from reality and that acts purely to keep their own status within the niche left circles. This idea doesn't help connect these Radlibs with the people, who won't listen to somebody that has nothing to say to them besides, "You're forever our enemies." This is a problem that's been holding back revolutionary progress ever since McCarthyism took communism out of the mainstream, and the three-letter agencies filled the vacuum with a new left that's compatible with imperialism, even though history has proven revolution couldn't come to be core until US hegemony became sufficiently weakened. Even during the empire's peak, the new left was wrong to view the people as fundamentally reactionary. It was never wise to essentialize Americans as adversaries to the proletarian cause, because the conditions have always been fluid, and people change with their conditions. The Panthers were organizing towards the state's overthrow within the most revolutionary elements of society before neoliberalism was ever implemented. Each successive crime against the working class that neoliberalism has brought, from NAFTA to financial deregulation to the pandemic's wage cuts, has been an opportunity for the left to renew the project of the Panthers, and the left has scorned these opportunities in favor of selling out to imperialism, which became apparent when Russiagate solidly reoriented the left towards the neocon stance. The traditional representatives of our liberation movements are disinterested in bringing the working class to victory, and they're showing this again by reacting to the anti-NATO movement with defenses of the notion that Russia was unprovoked, and with bad faith attacks against those who are most effective at fighting the war machine. Their next tool for trying to discredit the anti-imperialist cause is anti-colonialism, of the liberal kind that the bourgeoisie formulated during the early 20th century to break up the first anti-imperialist countries. They're calling to decolonize Russia through balkanization, as well as Taiwan through pro-US separatism. This foreign policy narrative tactic is being applied to the empire's core as well, in the form of a campaign to smear Marxist-Leninists from a decolonial angle. I've long said anti-colonialism as applied to the American continent is compatible with socialism, but these actors don't believe this. They seek to manufacture a contradiction between these two causes, where anybody who's serious about building a proletarian movement gets denounced as pro-colonial. Their recent rhetorical tactic is to apply the label of patsock to people who mostly aren't actual patsocks, but simply hold the stances that are necessary for being an effective revolutionary. One of those stances being that the majority of the US population has revolutionary potential. That's the difference between a settler colonial state like Israel or Canada and one like the United States. Whereas Israel and Canada have relatively small populations, one whose settlers can overwhelmingly avoid the fallout from capitalism's crisis by exploiting indigenous resources. The USA is too complex and populated for the equivalent to be true for it. Its indigenous people have been reduced to a tiny minority, but it has a large black population, a growing brown population that will soon outnumber the whites, and a white population that includes huge and growing communities with appalling poverty levels. I don't believe Israel or Canada will undergo revolution from the inside, but the USA is absolutely capable of that. When this happens, it will be the duty of the revolutionaries to invade Canada, to liberate the country's brutally subjugated natives, and the relatively few white Canadians who primarily are harmed by capitalism. By that point, US hegemony will be long defeated, and the primary priority will be solving the contradictions on this continent. At the stage we're presently in, the main priority is defeating US hegemony. We can't get to that ultimate goal without foremost focusing on the most important task of today, which we can't do by analyzing our contradictions through the lens of moralism rather than of dialectics. That our ancestors had a primary material stake in maintaining neocolonial extraction does not mean we also do. The nature of our social reality has changed.
so much that even many of the voters from the party of Bush are now compatible with the anti-imperialist movement. Those still fighting to maintain imperialism are the neocons, the liberals who have aligned with the neocons, and the sectarian leftists who don't care that their way of operating helps the former two groups. Most Americans only believe imperialism psyops for the time being because the pro-imperialismist accounts of events is all they've so far been exposed to, and they're too busy surviving under capitalism to readily seek out alternative viewpoints. The more of these proletarians we introduce to anti-imperialist ideas, the stronger our movement will get, and the harder it will be for the wreckers to impede our goals. That's why the state is close to passing the Restrict Act, whose goal is to criminalize all efforts at building relationships with anti-imperialist countries. The class conflict is close to escalating to its next stage, closer than one would assume if they haven't been following all of these developments. We must not yield to the attempts to intimidate us into compromising our anti-imperialist principles. The intensification of the campaign against us shows how much of a threat we're becoming. That's actually a really good point. Like, they wouldn't be trying to pass the Restrict Act if they weren't scared of their own people. That's the truth. Like, that's the truth. Is Ritter actually a registered sex offender? The CIA ran an op against him, and he kind of fell for it, honestly. Like, that's the long and short of it, what happened to Scott Ritter. That the CIA ran an operation against him, and he fell for it. You can listen to him talk about it. Am I the only one who took Sakai and saw it as an invitation to prove Sakai's assessment wrong? Sakai can be right until they're no longer right. I liked reading this one just because it did remind me, like, that the leadership that exists in America is really pathetic. Like, the fact that they are trying to pass legislation like the Restrict Act, the fact that they're trying to go after, like, TikTok, the fact that they're doing these kinds of things, like, these things are going to backfire in big, enormous ways, right? Like, you can't... It's one thing to kind of act like, you know, dopey capitalists and pretend like, oh, we're going to do something and it's going to help everybody, but then it doesn't, and you can kind of be like, oh, it didn't kind of work out, oh, goodness. And then it's another to just completely do something that's obviously fascist. Like overtly, obviously. Like, you got a bunch of people who are just, like, swiping on TikTok, and, like, 150 million people, and you're going to tell them no? You're telling them that's over? Like, that's finished? Right? Yeah, I don't know if I agree with all of it either, Compton. Especially when he's talking about... Like, I just like reading Ray Shea. I just like the quality of his writing. But I tend to think that America is going to balkanize, right? That, like, this is a very sort of hopeful message. Like, there's something nice about it. And it would be nice if this kind of thing could happen. That the revolutionary potential of America does occur. Like, I wouldn't complain, right? And yeah, Texas governor going to pardon murderer of BLM protester, and this sort of flows into exactly what we're talking about here, Tinker. That Texas, like, how much revolutionary potential do you actually think pardons BLM? Let's just, that should be enough. Yeah. This is, this is good enough. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says he's swiftly working on a possible pardon. That would be for convicted murderer and Army Sergeant Daniel Perry. Friday, a jury found Perry guilty of fatally shooting Garrett Foster, a man who's been taking part in a Black Lives Matter protest back in 2020. But in Texas, the governor can't issue a pardon all on his own. Like, if there was, like, an upswell of some kind of communist revolution of some sort, and if it were at all successful, that by itself would tear the country apart. that any revolution and any group of revolutionaries that was attempting to push towards revolution need to sort of face up to that reality. And I think like this article from Rainer Shea, like again, I like Rainer Shea. I'm not interested in critiquing him, but I do have to say that I don't think that this is an accurate assessment of how things would go down. That America is not, and Americans generally are not just gonna grab each other's hands and be like, yeah, revolution. Like, Texas will secede, you know? Like, if you went to the halls of power, like if you went to Washington, D.C. and stormed the Capitol and took power, even if you had the support of, like, the military leadership that you would need to have support from, and if you did all that kind of stuff, right? Like, places like Texas, Georgia, Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, right? They're not just going to go along with it. They're not just going to be like, yeah, revolution. Let's definitely pay attention to those communists. Like, it's just not how it's going to go, right? It's just really not going to go down that way. And then it goes the other way. Like, you're telling me that, like, Seattle, California, Maine, like New York, all of these places, if a group of libertarians storm the Capitol like they did January 6th and actually take it over and start passing laws and stuff, that they're all just going to go along with it? You know? Like, I feel like this article, and again, I like Rainer Shea, I'm going to continue reading his stuff, but it doesn't seem to want to admit that reality. And that if we're going to actually talk about real revolution and real things happening in America, it's got to be in this kind of context of balkanization, and it's got to be in this context of the empire declining. That America's going to fall apart. That it's just going to cease existing as an entity, or if it does exist, it'll be reduced significantly. And I don't think that there's really any force that can stop that. That the decline of an empire is a much more serious situation. Like, we're not talking about, like, staging a revolution in France. You know? We're not talking about staging a revolution in, like, the UK or something. In, like, one country. You're talking essentially about a revolution in 50 separate countries. In 50 separate states. That each has its own culture and its own ruling body and its own ruling organization. And the idea that you're going to be able to put forward some kind of revolution to take the whole thing over in a single sweep, no, you're not. Like, you're just not, you know? Good evening to you, Eric. And to me, moving forward, like, I just feel like there's this, like, no one is, oh yeah, in good news, by the way, just going to put that up. No one's actually, like, I've never heard anybody else talking about this other than me, right? I'm the only one that seems to be bringing up the reality that, like, America's probably going to break apart. Like, I think that I've heard, like, a couple of, like, you know, comedians and a couple of people kind of mention stuff like that, but I don't think I've ever seen anybody seriously comment on it. Like, yeah, it's crazy because Texas should be a blue state in a few years, but they passed voting repressing laws targeting minorities. Yeah, like, Texas is fascist, and they're going to become more fascist. Like, they're if they're not fascist, they're definitely, like, far right. And their ruling class certainly is, and, like, there's every indication that they're going to continue down that path. Like, I just feel like we're being a bit too rosy-eyed about how all this is going to go. Like, this Rainer Shea article, like, we're all, like, it's like toxic positivity, you know? It's like toxic positivity. Well, you have many Republicans who talk about a national divorce as if it's going to help them. Well, I mean, they get to become kings of a little, like, DeSantis would become, like, king of Florida, so it would help them. Yeah, he's young, Lawnmower Man. I think there's that. There's sort of, like, a hope there, and I understand, like, that's why I'm not, like, coming down hard, right? That's why I'm not being, like, brr about it. Diego, good to see you, bud. Like, because I think that's what it is. I think he's just a young kid who wants to hope and believe that things are gonna go in a different way. Tim Pool loves to talk about the Second American Civil War. Yeah, I mean, that'll be interesting, right? Like, is it going to be, because it's not like there is like a well-organized, it's not like the Confederacy. Like, the Confederacy was an organized military. Like, it had its own forces and it was its own country, essentially. Like, the Confederate South was essentially its own country. It was like organized as a feudal country, more or less. And the fight between the North and the South was a fight between two military organizations. That same structure doesn't exist. Like, sure, you've got militia organizations. Like, sure, you've got that kind of thing. But they're not well organized. They're not like... There isn't like the American military is still the strongest force that exists in America. And the idea that, like, I think that the violence that is happening in America is primarily chaotic. And to try to structure it or to discuss it in this concept or idea of an American Civil War, I think, is to sort of misunderstand, and I mean Tim Pool misunderstanding stuff, no big surprise there, but it is to somewhat misunderstand the historical bend and the historical narrative. That there are going to be like upcroppings, but they're going to look more like January 6th or the Occupy movement, right? That there are going to be these like moments where the working class and the people do gather in several places in large numbers, but like it's not going to be like organized military forces fighting back and fighting against one another. That might happen, and again, that may happen on a state by state level, right? Like, that may happen on a state by state level where like the people and the police, you see that in France. Like, France is like that, where the people are in the streets and the police are fighting against the people, and it's getting quite serious, right? We've got lots of footage of people throwing things at the police. We've got lots of footage of the police storming people. We've got lots of footage of the streets literally on fire, like literally on fire. And like, there's lots and lots of evidence to suggest that that's going to happen on a state level. And I just don't think like that the whole, like, people like Tim Pool, I think, are creating this narrative of a second American Civil War, and it's very imaginative, and it's not out of line with kind of what is going on in the world, but it's not nearly specific enough, and it's not deep enough into how the breakdown is actually going to happen. Like, as the breakdown occurs, and as the abandonment entrenches, and as the people are left to their own devices, and as sections of the populace are essentially just left to be oppressed by federal and state forces, like, you're going to see people in like Nebraska, people in Ohio, people in Florida, right? They will begin to struggle and fight back against state forces, but it's not because those people are particularly organized. It's not going to be because those people are fomenting an organized attack or something. It's literally just going to be because they've got nothing else, and it's going to be like a trend that the people who live in Camden, New Jersey, the people who live in Seattle, the people who live in the tent cities surrounding Los Angeles, like, just eventually there's going to be like a spirit and a spark that's going to say, just in the same way that we see school shootings, right? That there's like a spirit, there's a spark to it. There's this idea of I'm going to go in there and shoot these people, right? That that is going to become a more organized idea, and that's going to become less chaotic, and that's going to pick up steam. And I do think that I agree with Rayner in that there is revolutionary potential in America, but I think that revolutionary potential is limited to the borders of a state. I think this is Barry. Hello, Barry.
Hello, John. How are you doing?
Nope. I'm doing well, Barry. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. I'm happy to talk to you on the telephone. I'm not the high-tech guy.
That's all right, Barry. We're making it work today.
Excellent.
What a crazy world we live in, eh, Barry?
I know, and it gets more complicated every day.
Every day, it does seem to be the case.
But I'm really jacked because we got a lot of exciting things happening.
Well, why don't you tell us about those exciting things that are happening, Barry?
You want me to start right now?
Yeah, hit it. Let's go. Before you start, though, Barry, for those of you watching at home, Tinker, by the way, says, welcome, Conrad Barry. This is Barry Weissletter. He's the Federal Secretary of Socialist Action, which, near as I can tell, in the city of Toronto, is the strongest protest organization that seems to exist. So, I'm here today to hear what Barry thinks about what's going on in Toronto and Ontario generally, and maybe to pick his brain a little bit on what he thinks is going on outside of that. But let's start with what you are excited by, Barry.
Well, I'm excited about the spring. You know, it's in Toronto. It's a big sports night with the Jays and the Leafs active, heading towards playoffs in one case, and there's also a lot of action around politics. We have a special by-election to elect a new mayor because, you know, John Tory, the best thing he ever did in life was to leave his position under a cloud. And it's all up for grabs because there's no, you know, dominant candidate, although there's a lot of big money that's going to try to, advance the candidate with the best shot of serving the interests of big business. But nonetheless, the Municipal Socialist Alliance, which Socialist Action helped to launch a year and a half ago, is running a candidate for mayor. And his name is Kiri Vatavelou. He is a housing activist. He works with Acorn, is a founder of the Scarborough Tenants Union, and is a member of Socialist Action, who is the first Tamil Canadian to run for the position of mayor in Toronto. So I'm pretty excited about that, and we're going to figure out, you know, some outrageous and inspiring things to do to get some media attention, because, you know, there's 36 candidates.
That is sort of the problem, Barry. Like, how is a organization like Socialist Action going to get penetration, going to get people to even know that you exist?
Well, for one thing, we're not new at this. The Municipal Socialist Alliance, of which we are a founding portion, ran 10 candidates in the municipal elections last October in Toronto and across southern Ontario, from Ottawa to Guelph, and we got close to 15,000 votes. In fact, in a couple of Toronto races, we came second and a close fourth. So you know, we are known to a certain extent. We have a lot more to do, of course, because we're competing for attention. But I think that if we think creatively, think out of the box, as they say, we're going to be able to get attention to our policies for free public transit, for mass social housing, for repair of the schools, for cutting the police budget by at least 50%, and taxing big business, the giant landlords, the banks, tax their property. Property tax is something a city can do. And guess what? We're going to be the only campaign talking about a workers' agenda, talking about putting, making for a labor city hall. And we're the only group that is campaigning as an organization. We're running a candidate for mayor, but we've run numerous candidates before, and we will again, to show that we need political parties at City Hall. Otherwise, it's just a matter of herding cats for the bourgeoisie. We need a disciplined cadre of working class representatives to stir things up and to mobilize the population against the unaffordable housing situation, against the cut in civic services, which people feel, whether they see it in the parks where you can't get into the washroom because it's locked, or the fountains are not working in the warm months of the year, or whether the lack of childcare, or whether it's the lack of health care. There's an opiate crisis, and we need to talk about meeting human needs and not more cops on the subways. So we're jacked. We're ready to campaign aggressively for Kiri Vadavello, our candidate for mayor, and we're also doing stuff that's really exciting in the labor movement and in the NDP. So don't try to stop me telling you about that.
Barry, what's coming into my mind right now, and I know that I'm very guilty of this, and so I would like your opinion on this and how you feel and think about this, which is that I do know that there are people out there, and myself, I can fall for this as well, is that we have sort of lost faith with electoral politics. And I think that that's true kind of throughout Ontario at the moment. The last provincial election was the lowest voter turnout across the board, perhaps in the history of Ontario. And it feels as though many people are looking at the electoral system and they're beginning to ask a question of, well, what's the point even of voting? And that there's a sense amongst people that the system is rigged to ensure that parties or organizations such as yours will never attain power in the first place. What do you feel about all that, Barry?
Well, first of all, I'm on your side. I don't have any faith in electoral politics, and we're not doing this in order to advance anybody's parliamentary career in the bourgeois electoral system. We are anti-parliamentary party activists. We want to build power from the bottom up, not from the top down. We want to mobilize, we want to organize and inspire tenants and seniors and women and LGBTQI folks and migrant labor who are here but not paid often, and certainly not adequately paid. We want to talk about people who are suffering in long-term care, which is designed, in the majority of cases for private profit. We want to get people angry about the fact that Thug Ford, no, I didn't pronounce it wrongly, it's Thug Ford, decided just a couple of weeks ago to end a program that was instituted at the beginning of the COVID lockdown. Do you remember what that was? You were there with me at Queen's Park.
Please remind me.
Yeah. Well, they said OHIP coverage will apply to everybody, whether they're migrant workers, whether they're people who don't have, a registered address because they're houseless or because they're just not, in tune with the way the state operates. Well, Ford said, you're not gonna be eligible for OHIP anymore. This creep, dealing a dirty blow to working people, the most vulnerable, the migrant workers, the people who are in dire need of health care, and telling them, you can get sicker as far as I care. Of course, this is going to cost society more, isn't it?
Of course.
But, cutting off OHIP to thousands of people who, through no fault of their own, are not registered and don't have it, maybe their immigration status is in question, whatever the case may be, they're working people. If they're good enough to work, they're good enough to vote, and they're good enough to have all the services that a rich and progressive society ought to be able to provide. So, should people be disillusioned in the system? Abso-fucking-lutely. Absolutely, they should be disabused. They should be in disregard and disbelief, and they should be, annoyed on top of it all. So I'm not going to try to talk anybody into believing in a system that is designed to keep the capitalist ruling rich in control of everything. Their friends, Doug Ford's friends who bought some land in the Greenbelt, thinking, this is can't ever build on this. Oh no, you're wrong about that, because the government has a plan to keep you in its pockets and to put lots of gold in your pockets. So destroying the Greenbelt is not a solution to the housing crisis. It's just a play to get some Tories rich, if not famous. People should be really annoyed at the system that is designed to work this way. It's not an accident that it feeds the rich and starves the poor. We're going to challenge that. So why run an election? You're just on the edge of your seat. Why run an election if you have such a low regard for it? Because we want to agitate. We want to educate. We want to fan the flames of discontent. We want to be heard. We want the socialist message to be heard. And we'll use every and any platform to do it. If we had millions of dollars, we'd buy lots of ads. But although I don't like to see the money going in that direction, but we would paint the town red. In fact, May Day is coming up. It's just about 3 weeks away, and we're going to be decorating the urban landscape with posters from the May Day Coalition, of which we are a part. And it'll be talking about the need to rally together the day before May 1st, because May 1st is on a Monday, and we want to rally thousands of people on a weekend day. So it'll be on Sunday, April the 30th, and we'll be gathering at City Hall Square. What do they call it? Nathan Phillips Square. Another
Phillips, yeah.
Bourgeois character in the city's historiography. We're going to be there at 1 o'clock on Sunday, April the 30th, and on Saturday, April the 29th, we in Socialist Action, I think it's about 40 years in a row, not counting the COVID lockdown years, we're going to be back at the Free Times Cafe at 320 College Street at Spadina with a packed house celebrating International Workers' Day culturally and politically. We'll have speakers, poets, singers, musicians. It's going to be a great show on 7 o'clock on April the 29th at the Free Times Cafe, 320 College Street, just 2 blocks west of Spadina.
Barry, can I play at that?
Would you please?
Yeah, could I please play at that event?
Yeah, we'd love it.
Yeah.
I know you're quite a guitarist.
Oh, well, I've been singing all day today on my stream here, and so I've got some songs that I think would fit in with the theme of what it is we're all doing, and send me an email about that, okay, Barry? And I would like to be able to do that.
You can count on it, man.
Perfect. So, Barry, given what we're seeing happening in France, the streets are on fire in France. And
in France, in Germany, in Portugal, and in Britain.
So what is it? Because when we got together, you mentioned earlier that we had the opportunity to see one another at a protest. It was the many different medical groups, and then also Coopy showed up to it. But it seemed to be kind of a tepid, more emotional, catharsis-based kind of a gathering than actually setting up any kind of demands or actually doing anything. Why is it, do you feel, that we are seeing enormous street protests, violence, clashes against the police throughout Europe, but it seems as though the public here in Canada and across the United States seems fairly inert? What is it, do you think, that's causing that kind of malaise?
The organizations that purport to represent the working class and the different occupational groups and unions, are led by conservative bureaucrats who are living in the past. They grew up in the days when, the post-war boom looked like, capitalist expansion would never end. But in fact, capital has been capitalism has been in a series of crises, through the 1980s, 90s into the new century, and these bureaucrats have to stop living in the past. We say, lead or get the hell out of my way. And our position is we need to replace the conservative leadership, small c conservative, you understand? Mm-hmm. Small c conservative leadership of the unions that think that you're going to battle Doug Ford, down from his lofty perch by drowning him in news releases. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. They burn the news releases almost as soon as they hit the ground. We need strike action. Is this pie in the sky in North America? No, not at all. Cast your mind back to November. What we saw was 55,000 education support workers represented by CUPE, Canadian Union of Public Employees in Ontario, went on strike, and the government tried to intimidate them. Passed a piece of legislation, Bill 28, that said, you can't go on strike, we won't allow it. In fact, we'll impose heavy fines every day on every one of you if you proceed to strike. Well, they gave Ford the salute, the upright middle finger, and they went out on strike. They defied the legislation, and guess what? After 2 days of the strike, the Tories, with their tail between their legs, withdrew the legislation in such a way as that it never existed. It disappeared. So that was fantastic. That 55,000 workers showed what Marxists have been saying for a century and a half. Struggle decides, not the law. Struggle decides, not the law. And they won a modest wage increase, whereas they stood the chance of getting absolutely nothing. So what was wrong with that? Well, if they had persisted, if they had kept the strike going, they might not have had 2/3 of public opinion behind them, but they would have nonetheless had enough power, momentum, to get the other major issue addressed that was not addressed. Do you remember what that was?
No.
It was jobs. There's a lack of adult supervision in the school system. In many cases, you got one adult with 30 students, sometimes kids in the elementary grades. Mm-hmm. There's a need for more employment to create safer conditions and a better learning environment for the kids and also for the workers in the schools. And they didn't address that issue. That was the key demand that CUPE advanced at the bargaining table to increase positions in the schools and in the support capacity, education assistants, and all of the other fine folks who keep the schools running alongside the teachers. They didn't. They dropped it. They dropped it. They had a chance to extend the struggle to a complete sweep, a victory, but they dropped it. Yet, the fact that 55,000 were prepared to go out, did go out, defied anti-labor, anti-democratic legislation, and won a partial victory, what does that show you? It shows that there's an appetite for struggle. There's an appetite for struggle. Now, we see that much more developed in Europe. Mm-hmm. Well, Europe, the working class is more class conscious. And there's, a couple hundred years of class struggle. With every union has a radical wing. And in France, since that was the first one you mentioned, mm-hmm. The quadruple risings we're seeing on the old continent, mm-hmm. in France, there the issue is pensions. Mm-hmm. The age of retirement was 60. Macron raised it to 62, and he said, I won't do it again. But being a bourgeois politician, he is a well-practiced liar. Mm-hmm. And so he went from 62 to 64. it's practically where it was when Bismarck passed the law more than 100 years ago, made retirement 65, age 65. And why did he pick that number? Because he knew most workers would be dead before they escaped from the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So it cost him nothing to have an age of retirement that most people would not be able to enjoy. Well, people live a little bit longer these days due to improvements in medicine, but Macron wants to make workers, particularly workers in their senior years, pay for the capitalist crisis of overproduction, of the rise in the organic composition of capital. In other words, more machines doing the work. You can only squeeze a machine so much. You can squeeze a worker more. So they're in deficit territory, and they spend a whole shitload of money on weapons of war, and they're depleting the environment, causing ecological catastrophe, climate change. So for all of these reasons, they want to make us pay for their crisis. And in France, working people are saying, no, we won't do that. You lied to us once, and I won't let you do it again. So they're fighting back. And, that's not the only issue in France, because I was talking to a friend of mine. Actually, his name is Schuyler Williams. He's with Landback 1492. You've probably heard of him. Mm-hmm. He'll be speaking at our May Day celebration on the 29th of April at Free Times. He was in Germany, and he participated in a demonstration of 30,000 people over the protection of water from pollution in France, while all the other strikes were going on against the Macron's pension law, right? Mm-hmm. So you see, it's multidimensional. Big struggles in Germany, big struggles in Portugal, in Britain. You know what started today?
What's that?
Strike by doctors.
That's a big one.
The National Health Service. Doctors haven't had a pay increase in well over 10 years. And so these are highly dedicated professionals, and they're loath to compromise the well-being of their patients, right? But they figured, doctors are leaving the practice because they can't make a decent living. They're going to other countries where they might get paid a little bit more. So the doctors' organization and other healthcare workers said, look, we've got to save the health service. We need this strike to save the health service from the Tories who've been cutting it for decades.
Well, in order to privatize it, that seems to be the shtick, doesn't it? Like to defund it in order to privatize it.
That's part of the picture, yeah. That's part of the picture. Privatize it in various ways, through private-public partnerships, or just by letting people go to private clinics to get their treatment because they're not going to live long enough in order to get ahead in the line, for scheduled surgery. So there's privatization and just plain suffering, making people suffer.
Well, on that line, Barry, I want to read some of the comments that are coming up here. Yeah. We got Sir Thing Guy Man says, "Wow, this is insane." Kaya, good to see you, by the way, Kaya. Barry, I live in TCH. Would you let us have a 24/7 laundry now that Hydro is offering low rates overnight? And will Toronto offer all city employees sick days, including those on contracts and part-timers? Generation Why Me says, no one should believe that capitalists will build new apartment blocks and then undercut themselves and sell spaces below market rates.
That's right.
Ligand Disease says, wow. And then Command Genius makes a statement, and I think I would like to talk about this. I've seen a huge rise in fascism recently in Canada. Look at the comments on all Stand Up to Jewish Hate Movement videos recently. It's honestly scary. What are your thoughts on that, Barry?
Which one?
Yeah,
I mean, you threw out some, a dozen terrific comments. So
I
don't know where to start.
I've got good followers.
Throw one of them back at me, and I'll give you a reaction.
I mean, I think, Kaya, I think we can all agree that these would be beautiful things to see happen. But the one I think I would like to talk about most of all is actually about What do you make of and I seem to agree with this, I tend to agree with this, about the rise in fascism and the rise of fascist movements that are occurring not just through the United States, but they also seem to be happening here in Canada?
Okay, well, I can bite into that one. I'm sympathetic to the person who made the comment.
Mm-hmm.
Politics is shifting to the right,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the use of the term fascism is not scientifically applied. If fascism was underway, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd both be in prison, if
Right.
not dead.
Right.
So, fascism is a mass movement of petty bourgeois reaction, which is utilized by the ruling rich to crush an insurgent labor movement. The labor movement is not insurgent. The ruling class is not at risk of losing their system at the moment. Is it in the cards? Yes, definitely. But, are fascist groups on the fringes? Are they growing? Yeah, there's a rise in white supremacy, which is why one of our slogans in the Municipal Socialist Alliance is "fuck white supremacy." But we try not to get, ahead of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The fascist groups are tiny, but what they say could connect with disempowered and leaderless, aggrieved, ruined petty bourgeois, or even workers who've been cast out and cast downwards. So it's really important that we build up a revolutionary left, which is capable of providing the discontented majority with an alternative to right-wing populism, like Pierre Poilievre and the Tories like to offer, or the more right-wing People's Party of Canada. But even the PPC is not fascist. Fascism is a term used by overexcited minds who are getting a little bit ahead of themselves and who are prepared to throw in the towel. The working class is relatively strong. About 30% of the workforce is unionized, much more than in the United States, for example, where it's less than 12%, practically nil in the private sector. So we have a capacity to build a stronger labor movement, a stronger tenants' rights movement, a stronger women's and queer liberation movement, a stronger movement of migrant workers to demand justice for them, a stronger environmental movement to say that we're going to stop you from polluting the air with more burnt carbon, that it's going to cause more sea rise. There are no jobs under 10 meters of water. If you check, you'll see I'm telling you the truth. So, we still can win long before we see the threat of a fascist takeover. But there is a growing social polarization. And what I mean by polarization is I mean that society is dividing increasingly into two large camps. One, those who want to defend the system even though it doesn't serve them in most cases, and those who want to overthrow the system because they know it's failed and it's destroying the environment and threatens to crush nature and human civilization in the process. So we can still do it. But let's not say that the fascists are taking over or have already taken over, because it's not true. And we need to think more scientifically and understand that you don't have that kind of threat unless you have an insurgent labor movement. We're not yet at the point of having an insurgent labor movement. So that's what the socialists are working on, and what more of us need to be working on, making the labor movement and even the ranks of the NDP insurgent against a failed system.
That to me is actually what's so surprising, I feel, about what's going on here in Canada today, is that it does feel as though, and I've been talking a lot about this on my channel, I've been complaining a lot about this, is it does feel as though the role of the NDP is not being met, and that it's not being merited, that it seems that it came about as a counter to the conservative liberal inaction,
or cooperation, if you like, and steadily that energy over time has depleted, and now we're looking at an NDP that seems incapable of building force, even here in Ontario, where we've got this probably one of the worst premiers we've ever had.
Yeah. Well, that's why we in Socialist Action and in the Workers' Action Movement, of which we are a part, because we believe strongly in united front politics, so we work with allies in the labor movement as well as in the NDP and in the other social movements. You know, we've been saying we need a general strike to dump Doug Ford.
Mm-hmm.
We need to put the movement back into the labor movement.
Mm-hmm.
Labor organizations led by conservative bureaucrats with their six-figure salaries are inert from the top down. We need to shake them from the bottom up. And that can be done because our labor organizations still exist. Much more numerous, more labor organizational density than you have in the United States, as I said before. So we have the opportunity, but it's going to require a new breed of leadership. And that's what we aim to provide. So what are we doing about that? We're building up the Workers' Action Movement, which is a body of workers for an end to concessions bargaining. You know, the two-tier, like the last hired are not only the first fired, but the last hired get paid less than the people who've been working there before, doing the same work. So we're against two-tier, we're against, class collaboration, we're against, caving into the corporate agenda, the austerity agenda. We talk about the need for a multiracial working class movement around slogans like Black Lives Matter, defund the police, and down with white supremacy, as I said before. We need to be on the front lines fighting COVID-19 and with necessary vaccinations and proper apparel. We need to talk about international solidarity in the labor movement, standing up for the Palestinian people, Venezuela's fight against U.S. attempts to overthrow an elected government, defending the Cuban Revolution. Cuba is still, a beacon to the oppressed around the world in terms of a high-quality healthcare system, despite 65 years of blockade by the United States.
Well, what I always like to say about Cuba is Cuba has more doctors than Canada does, not per capita, but more doctors. It's an incredible statistic.
Yeah, and a different priority system.
Mm-hmm.
So they put people, especially women and children, at the top. So that's the Workers' Action Movement says we need to build chapters of WAM in every union. Every union. Even relatively progressive social justice unions like the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. And we're seeing changes. We're seeing big changes in OPSU, the Ontario Public Service Employees Union. Socialist Action has a long record of participation in that union at the grassroots level. One of our comrades is on the executive board of the union, but the new leader in OPSU is setting a progressive pattern. And we think there'll be more progressive militant leadership emerging from the ranks. And WAM seeks to build class struggle caucuses in every union that will advance militant labor democratic policies, socialist policies. And we do the same thing in the NDP through the Socialist Caucus. And when people say to me, the NDP is inert, there's nothing happening, you got to look below the surface. you might not see a lot of action on the surface, but there's a lot of churning occurring in the below the surface realm.
So, Barry,
and that's where we're building a socialist movement to push the NDP to the left. Do I think the NDP was ever socialist in the past? No. Do I think the NDP ever will be socialist in the future? No, not a chance. But when you got 3.5 million people voting for the NDP and recognizing that very few of that 3 million plus are capitalists, almost none of them, you want to reach those people who made a conscious break by joining the NDP from the parties of big business, the Greens, the Liberals, the Tories, and the PCC. The PPC. You want to appeal to them, say you've made a partial break from the parties of big business. Now go the rest of the way.
Now go the rest of the way. So Barry, on that note, then, as we're getting to the end of the conversation here, what can average citizens and what can regular people who are working their lives and who might not be very connected to what's going on in the world, what can they do to move this needle or move this ball or show support? What could the average person actually do to help?
Well, the average person can get involved where they live and where they work, and the average person can educate themselves. I always recommend, you won't be surprised, that they visit our website, www.socialistaction.ca.
I've got the website right up here, Barry.
Yeah. I invite people to visit the website, not for some kind of unrevealed truth, we're not idol worshippers, but we believe in scientific socialism, and that's demonstrated in practice through the experience. We have hundreds and hundreds of articles, even hundreds of YouTube webcasts that we've recorded. I did one just a week ago on the Communist Manifesto because it's the 175th year, don't you know, of that iconic document. And I'm doing another one a week from Thursday on the 20th of April at 7 p.m. I'm presenting on our YouTube webcast on the topic, what is Trotskyism? And some of the average folks out there might think, Trotskyism, what is that some kind of salad dressing? No, Trotsky and Lenin led the 10 days that shook the world. They helped to fashion the instrument needed in order to overthrow the Tsar and establish the first workers' government on a wide scale. Of course, the Paris Commune in 1871 was the first workers' government in one city, but the Russian Revolution, that was 1/7 of the surface of the earth, and it brought in a system that was anti-capitalist, but it faced a lot of resistance, wars of intervention, economic blockade, and the revolution was driven backwards and succumbed to Stalinist bureaucratization. But still, Trotsky, his theory of permanent revolution, his implacable struggle against imperialism, his opposition to Stalinist degeneration, that was the politics of the 21st century that kept the working class radical movement alive, that formed the worldwide anti-war movement that helped force American imperialism to retreat in defeat from Southeast Asia. The Trotskyist movement was not just, the radical students in Paris in 1968. It was the ecological movement, the third wave of feminism. It played a leading role in all these things, and I'm going to try and explain what Trotskyism really means. It's modern-day Marxism. The transitional program, democratic and transitional commands, all of that stuff.
Outside of that, Barry, how can people get involved? How can people get connected? How can people push back and push this needle to try to basically improve their material conditions and improve their life? I feel like there's a lot of malaise, a lot of hopelessness going on in the society, and
yeah. Well, if you're living in an apartment building, a big one, as many migrant workers and visible minority folks do in the Greater Toronto area, you can talk to your neighbors about improving conditions in your building and putting a freeze on the rent and not allowing the landlord to renovict you out in order to jack up the rent. You can organize among your community members, your fellow tenants. If you're in a workplace that's not yet organized, you can talk to your co-workers about forming a union. And you can get in touch with us, for example, because we know how to organize unions, and we'll help you. And we'll connect you with the union that may have jurisdiction in your area, whether you're a production worker in manufacturing or whether you're a working white collar in IT, whatever the case may be. So you can form a union. You can join the demonstration next Saturday, the 15th of April, at 3 o'clock on University Avenue to stand up for the Palestinian people. whether you're Palestinian or not. I'm not. I'm Jewish. I'm anti-Zionist. But you can show your solidarity. Just come on down to University Avenue, south of Dundas, and rally in solidarity with the Palestinian people, because they've been really taking it on the chin lately. The Zionists organized a pogrom against the residents of a small city called Hawara, which is just south of Nablus in the West Bank. The Israeli government is actually the closest thing to a fascist government we've got in Europe right now. It's not quite it, but it is tearing the country apart in terms of trying to remake the state in the image of authoritarian rule. For the Israeli Jews, that is. It's always been authoritarian rule and occupation for the Palestinian people since 1948. So that's another thing you can do, is show your international solidarity. You can support the Municipal Socialist Alliance election campaign. It's a by-election, and even though we don't have any faith or put any reliance in the capitalist state, we think that if the word gets out that there is a socialist alternative, that we can fight for a Labour City Hall, which is going to require a revolution to implement, not just one person occupying the mayor's chair. That can give hope to people who haven't heard that there is an alternative. So join the MSA, vote Socialist Kiri Vadavellu, put up some posters in your neighborhood, get them from me, call 647-986-1917. And if you think 1917 in that phone number is an accident, you're mistaken. So 647-986-1917. Join Socialist Action. Join the May Day celebration that will be held at City Hall on the 30th of April. Join the campaigns against cuts to healthcare. Stand up for public education. Say no to private-public partnerships that are just another route to privatization for profit. Stand up for your rights, sing the song, and join us in making the socialist revolution. I invite you all.
Thank you so much for your time, Barry. As a reminder, be sure to email me about that May Day celebration. I'd love to play. I've got some songs that I think you'd love to hear. And thank you so much for your time, Barry. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Your platform is a welcome place for those who want to fan the flames of discontent and change the world.
Well, thank you for saying that, Barry. That's a kind thing to say. Thank you for your time, Barry.
All the best.
All the best. And that was Barry Weissletter, Federal Secretary, Socialist Action. Oh, man. That's good to hear that there are passionate people out there doing good work, Someone like Barry. You can find that phone number. And honestly, Command Genius, you can just go to socialistaction.ca. He's got all this information on this website. Here, hold on. I can get this for you, bud. Can I get this for you? Oh my God, it's a disaster. It's a disaster. I had it. I swear to God. You can email them as well, bud. And they absolutely would love to hear from you. They absolutely would love. Oh, here we go. 647-986-1917. And I'll do you one better. I'll just put that right here in the chat. I don't know what's going on with this. It's telling me I have 0 concurrent viewers. But up here it's saying 8. I don't know what's going on with this. This is weird. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that I changed my thing here. I don't know. Who knows what's going on with any of these. Absolutely, Command Genius. Put the posters all over the white supremacist posters in your neighborhood. Absolutely. Most stable capitalist live streaming service. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, dude. It's really good to hear from Barry and to know that there are good people trying to organize, trying to fight back, being honest, being open. It makes me want to sing a song. Ha ha ha, you guys know me. These times they are uncertain, of that there is no doubt.
And nobody can tell me quite what it's all about. The heartbreak and the loneliness, the chaos and the fear will make even the strongest cry. I wish my ma was here. A young man on a battlefield fights for a rich man's gold. The bullet cracks into his spine, he knows he won't grow old. And as the tears come streaming down, at once his mind goes clear. The war was fought for nothing, he cries, I wish my ma was here. A lively story well in hand, a joke to soothe your soul. And when it came to arguing, she'd forgive and let it go. And when I cried, she held me, told me it's okay, my dear. And as we face these darkened days, I wish my ma was here. And as we march into the streets, as all the righteous do, we'll raise our voices to the skies. They cannot stop the truth. And as we tear their structures down, we'll raise a victory cheer. We made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. Yeah, we made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. Goodness me, man. Goodness me. What a time to be alive. What a time to be in the world. What a time to exist. To see the protests streaming across across Europe. Sort of live in a state of perpetual hope. Of perpetual hope that it can happen here. You know? Oh, thank you, Snake. I appreciate that, bud. I appreciate that. Oh, goodness. I feel like I'm suddenly very emotional. You know? Talking to Barry, it's it's a deluge of hope. It's a deluge of hope, of relentless hopefulness, even in the face of unrelenting, overwhelming odds, you know? Just overwhelming hope, with the hope that, you know, that it can happen here. That it doesn't need to turn bad. It doesn't need to go the dark way. It doesn't need to do that. That it can go the other way. And that it's possible. And that there are people who are struggling in other capitalist nations, in other places. We can see them doing it. We can watch them do it. And to know that it can happen here. And to hope that it will. Well, I think now is as fine a time to end the stream as there has ever been.
Please like, please share, please subscribe, please visit Socialist Action. Please get involved. Please keep your hope. And always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. The billionaires are doing everything they can and spending billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.